and begin Britain's exit from the EU. And yes, folks, those two things are connected, and the Chancellor is with me now. Can I start, Philip Hammond, by asking about these reports that you're going to do something big for training? Because I'm a wizened old sod, and I've been around for many years, and every Chancellor announced he's going to do something about productivity and training, and out there in the world, nothing quite happens. So why is it going to be different this time?
Well, we've got two big agendas. One is building an economy in the UK that works for everyone, making sure everybody has a chance to achieve their potential. And the other is preparing Britain's economy for a global future after Brexit. Both of those agendas imply that we need to do significantly more in training and upskilling our young people. So yes, it is a priority for me. In the autumn statement, we focused on capital investment in our infrastructure. But if you talk to anybody operating in the economy, they will tell you that the other thing we need to address is skills. So it's a high priority, and I advise you to tune in on Wednesday and see what I have to say about it.
And are we all going to be talking about T levels rather than A levels in the future? Is that your hope?
Well, I think the important thing is that we've got to establish genuine parity of esteem. For some people, they will study A levels at school and go on to higher education and academic route. Others will decide to take a technical route. And what we need to do in this country that others, the US, Germany, have done years ago, is create a technical route which is as rigorous, as clear in the qualifications that are achieved, and as well understood by young people and employers as the academic route is.
According to all the briefings today, you're spending £500,000 on this, which isn't a lot of money. Sorry, £500 million on this. Still not a great deal of money to perform a huge revolution, a huge transformation. Is it really a big deal?
Well, Andrew, as I know previous chancellors will have said to you on this programme, I'm afraid I'm not going to set out the detail of my budget.
They all tell me everything in the budget.
That's terrible, isn't it? I'm not going to set out the detail here this morning, but I do acknowledge that skills is one of the big issues that the government needs to address.
Are you concerned that, again, we're talking about briefing and economists and so forth, that almost everybody thinks you've got plenty of money to spend this time, that thanks to higher than expected tax revenues, Philip Hammond has a fat lot of money in his wallet?
Well, first of all, it's not money in the wallet because we're borrowing a huge amount of money. Remember, we have over £1.7 trillion worth of debt. We're spending over £50 billion a year just on paying the interest on our debt. That's more than we spend on defence and overseas aid together. So this isn't money in a pot. What is being speculated on is whether we might not have borrowed quite as much as we were forecast to borrow, and we'll see the actual numbers on Wednesday. But Andrew, if your bank increases your credit card limit, I don't think you feel obliged to go out and spend every last penny of it immediately.
Depends on your temperament.
I regard my job as Chancellor as making sure that our economy is resilient, that we've got reserves in the tank, so as we embark on the journey that we'll be taking over the next couple of years, we are confident that we've got enough gas in the tank to see us through that journey, and that seems the sensible way to approach it.
And this has been described as battening down the hatches, ensuring that you've got, as it were, windfall money in your back pocket should you need it. And in terms of the scale of this preparation fund, as it were, the Sunday Times is talking about £60 billion. We're talking about a lot of money, just in case things go wrong during the Brexit period. Is that right?
Well, I don't think it's about the Brexit period. I think any Chancellor would be sensible to try to make sure that he has enough flexibility to manage the economy on a day-to-day basis as we go forward.
What assumptions are you making about the divorce payment as a result of Brexit? I mean, we hear these huge figures from the continent about 40 billion or 60 billion. And here we've got the House of Lords Committee and your own legal advisor saying, no, we don't need to pay these people a penny. What's your own feeling?
Well, I think my feeling is that we're about to enter into a negotiation. And very often you will have noticed, Andrew, that when you're about to start a negotiation with people, they set out very large demands and very stark positions ahead of that.
And obviously, somewhere in the middle.
Obviously, this is a piece of negotiating strategy that we're seeing in Brussels. But the Prime Minister has been very clear. We're a nation that honours its obligations, and if we do have any bills that fall to be paid, we'll obviously deal with them in the proper way.
Can I ask what sort of area of money you're looking at in terms of preparing to pay bills to the EU?
Well, I'm not going to speculate about amounts other than to say that we are a nation which abides by its international obligations. We always have done, we always will do, and everybody can be confident about that.
Because it's not just about obligations and the law, is it? It's also a negotiation, as you said, and if we are going to get frictionless and free access to the single market, which we desperately want, then we might have to pay for that. That will be part of the deal. We've got the money, they've got the market access, and that is where the deal will be.
We'll be leaving the European Union, we'll be out of the single market, and we don't expect to be making large payments in future, but we may choose to participate in some programmes or some areas of activity with our European neighbours, and if we do so, we'd expect to make a proper contribution to those activities.
We're in a slightly strange position at the moment as a country because clearly the economy is doing better than a lot of people, including yourself, thought it would be doing at this point after the Brexit referendum vote. And yet, in the public sector, across the public spending curve, people are screaming with pain at the moment. And so can I ask you in particular about social care, which has become a really, really big political problem, not just for the government, for the whole country. Are you going to do something for social care? But more importantly, do we need to think about this entirely differently?
Well, first of all, as you said, the economy is performing extremely well, much better than many people projected that it would, and that's extremely good news. It gives the Prime Minister a very strong hand as she goes into the Brexit negotiations. But we recognise that our public services are under pressure to deliver the efficiency agenda that we've set out. And I recognise in particular that social care and local authorities delivering social care are under some pressure. But this isn't just about money. We should remember that there are many authorities managing extremely well. There are many examples around the country of extremely good working between the NHS and social care authorities. Just 24 local authorities account for 50% of all the delayed discharges from the NHS. So it's about good practice as well as about budgets.
It is also about budgets, as you know. Conservative councils are looking to put up council tax to meet the social care obligations. So I ask again, is this not something that as a country we need to think again about how we fund? Because the country is getting older, we're all getting older, the social care bill is just going to go up and up and up. And budget after budget, sticking plaster solutions may not be enough.
Well, I think there is a case for a longer term, taking a longer term view of how we fund a service which is intrinsically linked to the demographic profile of the population. And we know that we are an ageing society, so the demands of social care for the elderly are going to get greater in the future. And yes, there's a very good case for taking a strategic look in the round at how we deal with this problem over the longer term. I think that is
something that you as a government can review?
I think that is a separate issue from dealing with the short-term disparities that are occurring between areas that are coping very well at present and other areas that are struggling. We have to look at what the differences are there.
Can I ask you about progressive politics? And whether after this budget has been delivered and the number crunchers have poured all over it, they will be saying yet again, this is actually a regressive budget. You'll have seen the Resolution Foundation curve, which shows that people at the bottom of the heap, they're just about managing, that this government said it was going to be in favour of and working for, are going to have a really tough time in terms of their incomes over the remaining years of this Parliament.
Well, first of all, I don't recognise these numbers. Various bodies publish various numbers which exclude certain things. What we look at, the Treasury looks at, is the effect overall of tax, spending, benefits, targeted public spending on different groups. And there are some
taking all of that, if I may say so, into account,
well,
Resolution Foundation.
With respect, most of these figures do not take all of this information into account. For example, the IFS excludes both the top and the bottom 3% of the income distribution. It doesn't include all areas of taxation. It doesn't include all areas of government spending. But there are some very big steps about to happen as we go into 2017-18. We've got a further step of increase in the personal allowance, which takes more people out of paying income tax.
Say very gently,
we've got a big programme of investment in childcare. The government, by the time this programme is rolled out, the government will be spending £6 billion a year on free and tax-free childcare for families across Britain, that's a huge boost to real family incomes.
The Resolution Foundation takes both of those things into account when it shows that people at the bottom of the heap are going to get poorer, and considerably poorer, by 15 or 16% during the course of this government. Isn't John McDonnell right to say that there needs to be a national pay increase? You need to look again at the living wage and raise that.
Well, with the greatest respect to John McDonnell, we delivered the national living wage. We've delivered that pay increase. And anybody who is on the national living wage over the last 2 years, by the time of the next increase to £7.50 in April, will be receiving £1,400 a year if they're in full-time work, more than they were earning 2 years ago. So we've seen actually people at the bottom of the income distribution, the bottom fifth, seeing the biggest increase in real wages in the last data that's available.
The other thing that you could do is reverse the cuts to universal credit. Ian Duncan Smith, no less, called for this. And a lot of people think this is simply something that is unfair to people who are doing their damnedest, working very, very hard, going out to work, and are yet being penalised by the government quite hard.
Well, at the autumn statement, you'll remember that we did reduce the taper rate in universal credit from 65% to 63%. That's an income boost for 3 million people on low incomes. But there's always this challenge.
Can you do more, do you think?
There's always this challenge. If you have a generous system of benefits for people, as they move into work, somehow you have to taper those benefits away. And getting that right is always a challenge. But obviously it's something we will keep under review in the future.
Same sort of question about the cuts to the disabled, or the lack of increase for disability. A lot of people think that is a particularly cruel, that £3.7 billion shift is a particularly cruel thing to be doing.
Well, this isn't a shift at all. The government was very clear about the policy intention. A court has found the policy, the legislation lacking in clarity, and what the DWP Secretary of State has decided to do is to legislate to be absolutely clear about the original intention of Parliament. But nobody's going to lose any benefit here. There is nobody with a benefit award who is going to lose it as a result of this. But this is a large amount of money which is part of the benefit reforms that we'd already announced, and we've said very clearly we have no plans for further benefit reforms during this Parliament. But in order to make that statement, we do have to be clear that we have to deliver the benefit reforms that have already been announced and legislated for.
You've talked a little bit about Brexit. Can I ask you about something you said in Germany about what might happen if we don't get a deal? And I can read this out to people. You talked about you want to remain in a recognisably European-style economy with European-style taxation, etc. You say, but if we are forced to take something different, then we will become something different. We could be forced to change our economic model. The British people are not going to lie down and say, too bad, we've been wounded. What is the alternative economic model that you're talking about there?
Well, first of all, I'm very clear there, and the Prime Minister's been very clear, that we want to do a deal with the European Union. Yes. We expect to do a deal with the European Union that will allow us to continue trading together and allow our economy to remain recognisably in the European mainstream. The point I was simply making is that if there's anybody in the European Union who thinks that if we don't do a deal with the European Union, if we don't continue to work closely together, Britain will simply slink off as a wounded animal. That is not going to happen. So what the British people have a great fighting spirit, and we will fight back. We will forge new trade deals around the world. We will build our business globally. We will go on from strength to strength, and we will do whatever we need to do to make the British economy competitive and to make sure that this country has a great and successful future.
Because when you say we'll do whatever we need to do, a lot of people read that as we'll slash corporation taxes, we'll go to a low tax, low regulation, Singaporean style of economy.
Well, people can read what they like into it. I'm not going to speculate now on how the UK would respond to what I don't expect to be the outcome. But we are going into a negotiation. We expect to be able to achieve a comprehensive free trade deal with our European Union partners, but they should know that the alternative isn't Britain just slinking away into a corner.
A lot of this is about the tone of the negotiation. Don't you think the government would be much wiser and shrewder to accept what the Lords has done on the status of EU nationals and allow that to be on the face of the bill? Because that's a way that you can get goodwill and start these negotiations off in the best possible spirit.
Well, I think we already have goodwill, and we've already been very clear with our European partners that we are willing to settle this issue right up front in the negotiation. It isn't us that has refused to take this matter offline and deal with it reciprocally at an early stage. It's other members of the European Union that didn't want to take it out and deal with it separately. We are very clear. We want a deal on citizens, and we want a deal that's fair both to EU citizens in the UK and to British citizens living in Europe.
OK, can I ask you about a couple of other things? How worried are you that Northern Ireland is going to break away from the United Kingdom as a result of the elections and as a result of their enthusiasm for staying inside the single market, like Scotland?
Well, the Union is extremely important to all of us, but Northern Ireland in particular benefits hugely from the union of the United Kingdom. Northern Ireland has 4 times as much trade with the UK as it does with the Republic of Ireland, so the union is vitally important economically, but it's much more than just an economic issue. This union has made us strong and successful over many, many years, and the union of England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland will go on driving that strength and success in the future.
Channel 4 News have done sterling work in pursuing the Conservative Party about election irregularities. Do you think you're going to face by-elections as a result of what's coming?
Well, the party has already acknowledged that we made an administrative error in the way some of the returns were made. In fact, we drew that error to the attention of the Electoral Commission, and the due process has to be followed through, and we will cooperate fully with the Electoral Commission in doing that.
John McDonnell wants you to publish your tax return, will you?
No, I have no intention of doing so. Just for the record, my tax affairs are all perfectly regular and up to date. But I think this demonstration politics isn't helping to create a better atmosphere in British politics. And I note that the Labour Party is now proposing a policy that anybody earning over £1 million, which I, as a Cabinet Minister, certainly am not, will have to publish their tax returns, make them public. That is likely to drive away talent and investors that Britain needs to create the global future that we're trying to build.
Philip Hammond, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.